Hey everybody, welcome to another ArtistWorks Instructor Spotlight. And this week we are blessed to have the amazing Alison Brown. And the classic tune that she's covering this week is Lonesome Road Blues. So if you are just dropping the needle here, check out all the mini lessons that we posted. We put out one every day this week on our YouTube channel right here. So if you're not a member here, just like and subscribe and we'll keep you up to date with all the cool stuff happening here. But Alison has stepped through this tune, teaching you the melody, different phrases, ending licks, playing the tune an octave down, and all the chords, tips for accompanying a soloist. And we'll bring her on now to go even deeper and give you a masterclass here. And a little bit later into the show, we're going to be taking your questions. So just drop them in the comments if you have any questions for Alison. We'll get to as many as we can. And for sure, let us know where you're tuning in from. Drop any comments that you like. It's great to have you here. And let me bring on Alison.
Well, thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that. Thanks for your kind words, as always.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Alison.
It's great to see you, too. And I wish I could see all the banjo pals out there in Banjo Land, but I'm trusting that they're there and are all fascinated by the Earl Scruggs classic Lonesome Road Blues, which I think is just such a fun tune to play and really fun tune to break down because it gives you a lot of vocabulary for playing up the neck. And that's one of the things that I remember really being challenged by when I was learning to play was how do you go up the neck without getting lost? And I feel like this tune kind of gives you some really good tools to make it so that you don't get really lost when you go up the neck, especially in the key of G, but in other keys too.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you to take it from here. Yeah, take it away. Thanks,
Okay.
Alison.
Sweet, you bet. So, well, let me start off by playing a little bit of this tune for anyone who's not already familiar with it. And it's an Earl Scruggs classic, key of G. So what could be better than that, right? It's got all the great Earl Scruggs licks in it. And, you know, we never really we're just kind of go from the 8th fret up to the 14th fret. We're kind of staying in this area, which is a real sweet spot for, you know, developing solos. If you've already like played ahead down the neck and you want to go up the neck and do something, it's like, where do you go? So let's break down what Earl is doing here and what y'all will be doing soon, I hope. So this is in the key of G. So it starts off on a G chord. And what we're going to do is slide into the G at the 12th fret. So everybody knows that this is a G. The open strings make a G chord. That's why I like to tell folks that the banjo is the best instrument because the first chord is free. There's your G chord. So if you go up to the 12th fret and bar all the way across the 12th fret, you have another G chord. So there's your G and there's your G. So the way we kick off this tune is to slide into the G chord at the 12th fret. And we're just sliding right into a G chord, even though we're not playing the full bar. It's important not to, because your fingers will be more nimble if you just use the strings that you need. So sliding in on the 2nd string, reaching up there to that E note, and back to the D on the 1st string. And then Earl throws in this nice choke at the 10th fret. So what you're going to do is choke the 2nd string at the 10th fret. And when you do this choke, I remember this is kind of a breakthrough for me. Just remember that your ring finger isn't all on its own trying to choke that string. That would be really hard because your ring finger is not that strong. It's much stronger if you drop your other finger or fingers down on the string. So I almost always will put my middle finger down and sometimes my index finger. So that makes it much easier to bend that string. So that's how he starts off Lonesome Road Blues. So before we go anywhere else, one of the things that I think is really important is anytime you learn something is think about how you can repurpose it. It's kind of like if you're in the kitchen and you're cooking and you have basic ingredients. Maybe you've got some milk, you've got some butter, and you've got some eggs. Well, you can make more than one thing with those 3 ingredients, and it's the same thing with the banjo. So in this case, Earl's given us 2 really good licks. and it makes up the first phrase of the tune, but there's two really good licks here. Here's one. Well, that's a great phrase, and you don't have to just use it for Lonesome Road Blues. In fact, if say you're playing in a band, and maybe there's a female singer in the band, and she wants to sing a tune in the key of C, and maybe it's Bury Me Beneath the Willow, because the melody of that starts on this high G. Well, you might think to yourself, I remember Alison told me how you could slide into that G chord on Lonesome Road Blues, but I could use that same lick here. And then there's your start of Bury Me Beneath the Willow. So I did the same lick. Supposing the singer decides that key of C is a little bit too low. Let's try it in D. Well, you can use that lick in D. And then you could go on from there. So as you learn each thing, think about how it applies to the tune you're learning, but also think about how you could just put that one idea on a flashcard, put it in your Rolodex, and pull it out for other times that you might need to fill in the gaps. Okay, so the next lick is that choke. So this is a magical lick. It's magical because you can use it over many chords. You can use it over a G chord like we're using it in Lonesome Road Blues, or you can use it over a C chord, or you can use it over a B flat chord. You have to trust me on this, but maybe later on I can pull a guitar player in to do a proof of concept on this. So this is a really versatile lick right here in the G position. And I'll try to illustrate that a little later on. But it's also usable if you're in the key of C, for example. We're doing our Bury Me Beneath the Willow. You could go. So it's a little bit harder to bend that string. Remember to keep your middle finger and your index finger there to help. Or you could do it in the key of D. So we've learned 2 Earl Scruggs licks just in learning the first few bars of Lonesome Road Blues, but we've spun it out, so now we have like 6 uses that we thought of just in the last few minutes for those 2 ideas. So really try to think that way as you learn anything new. What else can I do with this idea if I apply it to a different key? Okay, so then Earl goes on from this part. First, I'm going to take the liberty of getting in tune. Gives me a chance to mention a couple of tuning techniques. My second string is sharp right now because I've been bending it. So I could tune it with my tuners, but sometimes when a string is just a little bit sharp, I use my ring finger and I just push on the string. If I push on the string just a little bit, it will make it a little flat. In this case, not flat enough. So I'm going to use my tuner. Always want to tune the second string at the 3rd fret. You don't want to tune it open because it's really important for the second string to be in tune with the first string. So when you're tuning the second string, the test is always, is it in tune at the 3rd fret? And then jump up here to the 8th fret. Is it in tune with the 5th string? So those are the 2 places to check. Now, if in the process of tuning that string, I had made it a little bit flat, I could push on the string here and it would bring the pitch up. See? And now it brought it up, so I'm going to push on the string. Let's see if I can get it to go down a little bit. So just the way fiddle players have fine tuners, that's our fine tuners for banjo players, is pushing on the string if your string's a little sharp, or pushing here behind the nut to make the string go up. And you can also just use your tuners, which is what I'm going to resort to here. Then checking it at the 3rd fret, check it at the 8th fret. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. Okay, and then he throws in. So this is a really great lick. Now we're in the key of G and playing over a G chord. Still a little challenged on tuning. If your strings won't get in tune, it might mean that you need to change them. I think I need to change mine, but I'll do that after this live stream. So there we are. All right, so this, for anyone who's keeping score, you might say, well, that's an E minor chord. And it kind of is, isn't it? Because we're playing an E note, a G note, and a B. But it's functioning as a G chord in this song. But if you learn the tune Cumberland Gap or Sally Gooden, Earl's playing out of this shape. So it's one of those interesting things where you can throw that E tonality, which is the 6th note in the G scale, and still it functions over the G chord. So that nice forward roll. It's very simple. So the next thing we're going to do is slide into a C. And that's just a nice picking pattern. Here's it's a C chord. The C note is on the first string. It's referring to this full C shape, which is just like this G shape down the neck, moving it up here to the 10th fret. Remember, the root is held down by your ring finger and also your pinky. In this case, we don't need to play the 4th string, so we're not going to fret it. But you have to be sure to use the same fingers as you would use if you were going to fret all 4 strings. So that's why I'm using my index finger on the 2nd string, my middle finger on the 3rd string, and my pinky on the 1st string. So hopefully all you guys out there are thinking, okay, I could use this musical phrase in other places, and you're absolutely right, because you're basically playing out of a closed position. The only culprit's going to be that G note that's ringing over the top of it. So it might sound a little funny if you did this on an E chord, and it might sound a little funny on a D chord, but you could probably get away with it. On a C chord, it works great because the G note is in the C scale, so it's part of the chord. We could use it on an A chord. In this case, that G note is the 7th note. It's the flat 7 in an A scale, so it makes an A7 chord. We can use it on a B flat and a C, and here's a D. So you could take this lick and you could almost write your own tune. It sounds like the B section of a tune. You could go. And that's kind of a little tune by itself. So jumping back to Lonesome Road Blues. We slid into that C chord, then we're going to reach up here. So we've got the 11th fret on the 2nd string with my middle finger, and pinky on the 1st string. And then we're going to go back to this E minor shape. And this is a backwards roll starting on the 1st string. And there's that forward roll again. This is classic Earl Scruggs vocabulary. So cool, because closed position again, you can use this in a lot of different places. That's a C. The root here is on the 2nd string. Let's see, another place we could use it would be on an F. That was an E actually. Use it on an F. So there's another weird little tune. Just you could use that lick. I mean, it would be a weird little tune, but it works. So again, taking this idea and repurposing it. here's a variation on that lick, which is also a nice little phrase. Earl's lick in Lonesome Road Blues again starts as a backwards roll. But what if you just started on the second string and you went, or those are two related kind of variations. It's kind of like taking your eggs and your butter and your milk and maybe throwing some nutmeg and cinnamon in there. It's just a little variation on the theme. So you're just starting on the second string instead of starting on the first string. And all of these bits, if you check out the tune Sally Gooden, you know, Earl's classic way of playing that tune uses kind of a lot of this information, same information. Let's see. So it's all interconnected. So by learning what we've learned so far, we've really learned almost the whole tune, because a lot of these little phrases in Lonesome Road Blues repeat. So let me show you what I mean. We'll go back to the top, sliding into that G. Then it just repeats that C lick. And then we're just back to sliding up to the G. Slight variation, so instead of reaching up to that E note, we're just staying on the G. Choke. And then the backwards roll. So it's a whole tune made out of just a few ingredients. And all those ingredients can find different applications in different places. And that's a lot of the fun of this, is, you know, I just remember how challenging it was. It's like, okay, I can play below the 5th fret, but how am I ever going to play up here between like the 8th fret and the 12th fret? And a tune like this gives you a lot of vocabulary for doing just that. The other trick to not losing your way as you go up the neck is knowing kind of where the chord shapes are, because if all else fails, you can play a roll over any chord, and it may not be the best idea, but it will be an idea that will get you through the musical phrase you're trying to get through. So let's just review real quick. This tune is in the key of G, and we all know this basic G chord. And the root is on the 4th string and the 2nd string, 1st string. So there's your G. This is the next G shape up the neck. And your root is on the 2nd string. So I remember being told that it was important to know where the notes were, and I just didn't want to have to think about that. I just really wanted to play the tunes. But I can tell you, it's a really good idea to know where the notes are, because if you do, you won't get lost. So when I grab this G chord, I know that my G is on the 2nd string, and I know that this shape is a G chord. So if I'm lost, and I know that this tune's in G, and people are playing a G chord, I can just play a roll over the G chord, and then I could just play a roll over the C chord. This C chord is the same as this shape, where the root is on the 4th string and the 1st string. So I know this is where I grab a C, this is where I grab a D, moving it up. So worst case scenario, if you're playing Bury Me Beneath the Willow with your band and your singer, and she's doing it in the key of C, and you decide to be bold and start a solo up the neck, and you get lost, you know that the chords of this one are going to be C, F, G, and C, and you're lost. So what do? Just play the chords. There's your F chord. Remember, it's just like your G bar down to. You can grab it there, or you can grab it here, and then you go back to your C, and then you go to your G. And back, and if we're doing the key of G, and we're doing Bury Me Beneath the Willow on the key of G, same deal. It starts on your G chord, to your C, to your G. And so on. So if you know where those shapes are, I promise you, you won't feel like you're in no man's land when you go up the neck. You'll really, it'll start to come into focus. And then the next thing is to remember these little bits that you took away from Lonesome Road Blues and just throw them in. And, you know, maybe that's all you can remember. And then you could just go to your G chord and play an arpeggiated roll. Same thing, you go to your C chord, maybe you remember this much. But that's all you can remember. Do that a couple times. And maybe you remember this backwards roll. And you can throw that in. So it's really that idea of like putting each idea on a flashcard in your mind. And then you can reorganize those ideas as you need to and apply them as you need to different songs. One more little bit on backup, because two things that will make you always welcome in a jam session. One of them is to play in good time, no matter what you're playing. And the second thing is, if you can play backup that's tasteful, musically appropriate, so sonically appropriate, you're listening to other people, you're not playing too loud, but you're also not playing too timidly, you're making a musical contribution to what's happening in the circle. But all you can do is play backup, but you can play backup in good time. You're going to be welcome in any musical situation. So, and that's the goal of this whole exercise, which is to play music with other people. So let's grab that G chord again. This is my favorite backup pattern. And it starts off on the G chord. In this case, we'll be in the key of G. We'll play backup for Lonesome Road Blues. So starting off with this G, I play the fourth string, and then I pluck 3, 2, and 1. After you pluck the strings, relax your left hand. So keep your fingers on the strings, but just release the pressure. So you get kind of this percussive chop rather than a ringing sound. So this is not what you want. And this is what you want. So you could just do that. And do it on C, and D, and back to G. But if you want to move to the next level of backup, this is a pattern I really like. So you go from this up the neck. So you go to the second position G, where the G note is on the second string. And you're going to play 4, 2, 3 and 1 together, and 2. Now you probably notice you don't really hear the last note of the up the neck pattern. It's kind of deadened and your hand is sliding back. The whole trick to doing this and making it not too hard is to keep your fingers, your ring finger and your pinky, on their strings. So keep these fingers on the strings, and as you slide up the neck, flip-flop your inside fingers. If you take your hand off the fingerboard, you're going to make your workload a lot more. If you keep it on, you'll see it's just a small movement. As you slide your hand up the neck, you're flip-flopping your inside fingers. And that's all there is to it. That's easy. You can do that from C. And you can do it on A. And D, of course. And back to G. So that's a backup pattern that I really like to use. And it's a good one to keep in mind. So I think we've hit a lot of the high points for Lonesome Road Blues. I don't know if there might be any questions yet. I hope you guys won't be too shy. And if anything comes to mind, you'll pop in with any questions that you might have.
Totally. Yeah, we've got a couple questions coming through. But before we hit those, I was just wondering, would you mind playing a version of the full tune for us?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Do you think that I'll just go ahead and play. I could see if I could get a guitar player to play along with me, if that would be
That would be really cool. Yeah, we kind of tinkered with a track, and yeah.
Yeah, and the sonics weren't the best. Let me see if I can get somebody. I'm here at the Compass Studio, and there's Forrest O'Connor is in the other room mixing a record.
Very cool.
And so let me just text him real quick and see if he can join us.
So while we're waiting on a feedback from him, can you tell us a little bit about the Compass Studio there? I know it's a very historic place you're in there.
Oh yeah, I know because you've had a chance to hang out here a little bit. Yes, well, we're super proud to be the caretakers of this legacy studio. I know you can't see very much, but this studio was built by the Glazer brothers in the late 1960s, and this room was really sort of the birthplace of outlaw country music, and it's a genre that really transformed Music Row because prior to that time, I think Nashville was a very buttoned up music scene, and sessions here in this town would happen on a strict 10, 2, and 6, meaning 10 o'clock session, 2 o'clock, and a 6 p.m. session. And then the Glazer brothers basically said, we're going to build this room, and y'all come, and you can work here 24/7. So this became the scene of just some incredible creativity and partying also. But this room is where John Hartford recorded his steam-powered aeroplane or aeroplane record. Tut Taylor recorded Friar Tut here, and Norman Blake recorded Home in Sulphur Springs. Come on in, Forrest. And a score of like very important country records too. Waylon Jennings did a record here called "Dreamin' My Dreams," and I'll pass this over to you. So yeah, it's an incredible room, and anybody who wants to come take a gander if they're in town should just holler at me because we're very proud of it and love to show it off. So Forrest has graciously agreed to join me. Maybe I could get you to
grab a bench over there.
Yeah, grab a bench.
Probably tune this because it sounds like it's
Well, we're going to tune the guitar, and then I really want to show you guys this trick of the choke, the 10th fret choke, because it is a very magical lick. So we'll be able to do that in just a second. But right now you're looking at me. As you're looking at me, our piano room is right behind me. So there's a piano behind me, and then there's 2 ISO booths right behind that, and then we've got the main tracking room is the room that I'm sitting in. So it's very cool. When we got this building, we didn't realize its connection to John Hartford, and of course John Hartford is very near and dear to my heart as one of the great banjo stylists and just a true icon in American roots music. And his song "Gentle on My Mind," the Glazer brothers published, and with the publishing royalties was how they built the studio. So I feel a connection to John every time I come in this room for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you actually have, don't you have like a Deering custom based off of?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I should have, I don't have it here today, but yes.
Such a cool story on that one.
John Hartford's sound is really associated with the low banjo sound, which is, it's funny because you talk about low banjo and it sounds like it's a different kind of banjo. And this is Forrest O'Connor, who's very graciously joining in on this very impromptu jam. But yeah, the low banjo is just a regular banjo. It has heavier gauge strings on it, which means that you could take the heavier gauge strings off and put regular gauge strings on it, and it would just be a regular G banjo. But if you put heavier gauge strings, you can tune the banjo down. So I'm in a tune to a G chord, and usually on the low banjo with the heavier strings, I can tune down to an E chord. And so in that like fictitious scenario where maybe you're in a band with a female singer who wants to sing a bluegrass standard that's usually in G, A, or B, but it's better for her range to sing it in D or E or F, you can pull out your low banjo and then still play out of the open G position. So it requires a slide rule to figure it out, but it's not that complicated. So we can play a little bit of Lonesome Road Blues.
Yeah.
And
Let's give it
I'll
a
play
shot.
the full tune, and then I'm going to throw in that choke lick, and then you can see the magic of the 10th string, the 10th fret choke on the 2nd string.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Forrest.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so this is very unrehearsed. But that's hopefully a good thing. So yeah, key of G.
And then the progression, can you call it out as we?
Oh yeah, so that gives me a chance to talk about this chord progression. So the chords on this, it's a blues in the sense that it's 1, 4, 5. So it starts on a G and then it goes to a C, back to the G, and up to the C again, back to the G, and then up to the D. So you'll hear it.
Yeah.
And I can call it out in numbers. If you hear me calling the numbers out, the way you figure out what the heck I'm talking about, it's kind of a Music Row shorthand that we talk in numbers a lot because it enables you to change keys without having to rewrite a chart. And it's so simple and so elegant. Basically, it just comes from the notes in the scale of the key that you're in. So we're going to be in the key of G. So the 1 chord is the G. If you count up the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, you get to a C note. So that's the 4 chord. And then if you go up one more, you are at the 5th note. So that's the 5 chord is a D. So it's going to be a G, C, D, G. All right, let's see what happens. Thank you, Forrest.
Sure. Yeah. All right.
I'll text you.
So cool.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll speak to you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you, Forrest. That was a nice treat. I'm
Forrest
gonna
starts
throw
on
this
our
up
guitar.
here. Yeah. I found this in the meantime, so I'll just throw that up there. Check out Forrest.
Yeah, do check out Forrest. He's a great songwriter, a great singer, a great guitar player, and a great mandolin player, and compass artist. So thank you, Forrest.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we did get a couple of questions that came in. Christoph is asking, how can you play such beautiful notes on the banjo? But asking about where the distinctive tone comes from. Also asked if it was due to a Pruka banjo. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about banjo tone so people can find their own tone.
Yeah, well, thanks for your question, Christoph. So, yes, it's a big question. So this is a Pruka banjo, and Yaroslav Pruka made it especially for me. It's a signature model, and I really love this instrument. I love the craftsmanship is just amazing. The sound is really warm and fat, which is kind of what I really like to hear, and I talk about that in a minute. But it also has the extended fingerboard, so I can go all the way up to a high D, which can be just a super fun thing to have. Even though it seems like you wouldn't need it, you could play ground speed up an octave, so that makes it kind of fun. It's a super handy thing to have, and I play this instrument a lot, all the time on the road, and a lot of times at home. So talking about banjo tone, banjo is a really interesting thing because you can really manipulate the tone. It's like a drum in the sense that you can, like, there's so many moving parts. There's all these brackets. You can adjust how tight your head is. The tighter your head is, the more bright your banjo is going to sound. You can adjust the level of your tailpiece. The more it'll sound brighter if you tampen it down. I like to keep mine parallel to the head to kind of pull out a warmer sound. And there are just so many variables in the instrument setup itself. And it's funny because banjos in the 1970s were so much, like, generally speaking, people played them to sound much brighter. And the sound of the banjo is really much more like the sound of shattering glass than it is now. I feel like the banjo's really progressed towards a warmer sound, like, generally speaking. And that's certainly the sound that I favor. So that also has to do with the way you approach the instrument and where you play on the instrument. If you think about Ralph Stanley, he played an archtop banjo. Mine's a flathead banjo. Archtop banjos are going to sound brighter. So he already was playing a bright sounding banjo, and then he would really play close to the bridge, like that kind of thing. So if you play close to the bridge, you're going to get a really bright sound. If you move your hand just a little bit forward from the bridge, you're going to get a warmer sound. If you move your hand kind of halfway between the neck and the bridge, you're going to get a warmer sound still. And then if you move up to close to the neck, you get an even warmer sound. So it's really important when you play to listen to yourself, because I think a lot of times it's very easy to get in your head and you're worried about like executing this lick that you're trying to play, and you forget to actually listen to what you sound like. So force yourself to have the discipline to listen to what you sound like. And when you play in a jam session, be sure to be listening to the other people, not just to yourself. Like, the game of music is all about listening and fitting in sonically with what's happening around you, whether it's a jam session or just what you're trying to execute. So if you're playing a chord melody, when I play chord melodies, I tend to play them closer to the neck, just to pull out a warmer sound in the instrument. If you're playing a bluegrass tune, I'll be closer to the bridge, but not on top of it like Ralph Stanley, more like this, to get that kind of sound. But I generally have this instrument set up with like the brackets and screws and stuff on the loose side to keep a warmer, fuller sound coming out of the instrument. So that was a very long-winded answer, but I will say that Pruka makes great banjos. Deering makes great banjos also, and I love my Julia Bell low banjo, and I'm remiss for not having it here so I could pick it up and play a few licks for you on it.
Awesome. So David Hall just asked about printed music. For folks that are following along, trying to pick up this tune, I know that having some written materials can be helpful. Just wanted to point out that all the lessons in your online school have tab with notation, and there's a ton of backing tracks to jam on, different tempos. And you can also adjust the speed of the videos and the tempos so that you can really kind of woodshed and do your thing. But any comments just on as far as like ear versus working off of a sheet? Like what's your process? How do you normally work with that?
When I was learning, I learned a lot from tab. And I still like to see things written down because it helps me to organize them in my mind. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with using tab. I think it's just a great tool, just the way classical musicians have sheet music. Where it breaks down is when you can't get away from the printed page. So that's where the muscle memory of practice really comes in handy, and then just weaning yourself away. And I've had that experience of, maybe you sit in with a band. I'm lucky enough to get to play with Indigo Girls every now and then, and I've got all their charts on my iPad, but I don't do it regularly enough that I have a string of dates to remember all the music. And so I'm like forever wedded to the chart, which is very musically unsatisfying. It's much better to learn the music, make it a part of you, get the muscle memory happening so your hands know what to do, and then get away from the page. And so that needs to be the ultimate goal, but I really think that having something written down can help you to organize your thoughts so you can kind of see, like hearing a backwards roll is one thing, but if you can see it written down, you can see exactly what's happening. And then it's just a matter of internalizing it, just practicing it enough so that your hands can remember it and your brain can remember it, and then trying to get away from the page. So use it as a tool, but don't get stuck married to it.
Great advice. Awesome. We got a great question here from Julie. You probably recognize Julie. Hi, Julie. What's the best way to practice speed?
Do I see another question popping in?
Yeah. What's the best way to practice speed?
The best way to practice speed is by playing slowly. That sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? But it's truly the best way. Because if you can't play, and I know everybody's heard this 100 times, and I can tell you from personal experience that it is actually, you've heard it 100 times because it's true. If you can't play something slowly in good time, then if you speed it up, it's just, at worst, it's going to be a train wreck. At best, it's just going to be something people don't really want to hear. So the best thing is to practice with the metronome or other time source. And we're so gifted these days in the sense that we don't have to just play with a metronome that does this, but there are all kinds of backing tracks and things you can find to play along with so that you're not just sitting by yourself going crazy with a metronome. But playing with the time source is really, really important. And then what you do, and what I do, is just gradually speed it up until you can get it to the tempo that you need it to be. If you start off fast, which is what we all want to do because it's more exciting, you will likely crash and burn, and it just won't be as much fun as if you can feel really solid with what you're doing. Like we play Sally Ann a lot. This tune. When we do it live, we tend to play it really fast. Well, if I haven't played it in a while, I always have to slow it down to make sure that I'm getting all the licks in so that when I play it fast, they'll be cleanly executed and the space between the notes will all be even. That's like the whole role of the banjo. We're kind of like the hi-hat would be in a rhythm section, that we're subdividing the beat. So if you don't have the same distance between each of the notes, then you're going to let the band down. Like they're looking to you to like very distinctly and cleanly subdivide the beat. And that comes from practicing with a time source, whether it's a metronome or a backing track. That's going to be the best way to go. And it really, I can promise you too, that it sounds like it's not going to be any fun. And it doesn't mean that you have to like play things slow forever and ever. It just means that if you're trying to get Sally Ann up to speed and you need to play it fast on Saturday, start on Monday and have, play it slow. I'll play a little. Like that lick. So I don't want to mess that lick up when I'm playing fast, so I have to practice it slow to make sure I've got it under my fingers. So Monday you're slow. Monday you're at 120. Tuesday try it at 125. By the time you get to Friday, you want to be at 140 or 150. And by having played it multiple times slow and progressing up through those tempos, by the time you hit Friday and Saturday, you're going to be able to rip on that tune. I can promise you it works that way, and it's very gratifying when you get there.
That's great advice. Very cool. So this is actually a great question. And it just leads into, like we're all huge fans of your beautiful chord melody style arrangements. You've done some just absolutely beautiful stuff. Here's a question. In an interview with Tony Trischka, you played part of Amazing Grace, which sounded beautiful. Is that certain style? And how do you improvise doing that type of music? So maybe just some advice on how you work up like a solo arrangement of a tune that you love.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I love doing chord melody things, and I love showing them to other banjo players because I think, a lot of banjo players, like we get locked. We come to this instrument with our picks on the 5-string banjo out of bluegrass music. But, it kind of ignores the fact in a way that the banjo has been on, even the 5-string banjo has been in a lot of different kinds of music before Earl Scruggs ever put his picks on and picked up a banjo. So like playing beautiful melodies on the banjo in some way kind of harkens back to the days of classic banjo. In the late 1800s, there was some really beautiful music and some really silly music, but also some very beautiful music being played on the 5-string banjo. So I like to kind of highlight that beautiful side of the instrument and kind of that part of the instrument's history. If you want to do that, the best way to go is to pick a melody. Like Amazing Grace is a good one because in the key of G, I haven't played this in forever, but the melody lays on the first string. So you're able to put in chords underneath that melody. Or, Auld Lang Syne is another. So the trick is to look for a melody that'll lay nicely on the first string. Oh, Susanna is one, even though I kind of start on the second string, you could start it on. And then you're just kind of putting harmony underneath. And then looking for harmony on that walk up. There's that E minor shape. Remember? That shape. So I don't know why more people don't do that. Hopefully more people will start doing that, because pretty much any melody that you can find, especially if you can lay it out on the first string, will work really well. And then you just get to use your ear to color around those notes by, playing different chords underneath the melody note on the first string. So I hope that that's helpful. Really, there's no wrong thing. It's like you can take a simple melody like Amazing Grace and do the most basic thing with it. Whoops. Or you can put, try to put more. See if I could find an example. Put a little bit more harmony underneath it. That kind of thing. So it's all right there, but just start with finding the melody on the first string.
That's great. John Bradfield asked this question: are you making a tape of this for your banjo pals? I'm not exactly sure what that means, but if it's asking if you can view this later, this will be available on the ArtistWorks YouTube page, along with all the 5 mini lessons that came out this week. So be sure to check that out.
And a big shout out to Banjo Pal John in North Carolina. Thank you for your question, John. Yeah,
awesome.
That's old school to ask about a tape. But
very cool. Here's one from Lou in Fresno, California. Can you talk about picks, thumbs, and fingers and preferences, and talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm glad to talk about picks. Picks were like my nemesis when I started to play the banjo. They were the thing that made me not want to play this instrument, because I started off as a fingerstyle, guitar player as a kid. No picks, fingers touching the strings, and I felt a real connection to the guitar because of that. As soon as I put these on, I felt like I was fighting these metal things when all I really wanted to do was play the banjo. So the first thing I want to say is picks are hard to get used to, and they're hard to break in. And you can talk to pretty much any pro player, and I bet they would tell you the same thing. I've had this conversation with Bela. It's like, if you lose your picks, it's worse than losing your computer and your wallet and having to do your tax return that day. It's just like the worst day, because they need to fit snugly to your fingers. They need to be molded just right. The edges need to be buffed off and smooth. But you can kind of get that by rubbing them on the carpet. But yeah, getting them to be nice and tight, especially if you're a female player or a guy with smaller fingers, bending over the tops of the metal parts and not having them catch on things, it's just really takes a long time to break them in. So that said, I tend not to vary my picks very often. I only change my finger picks if I lose one, knock on wood, that's not going to happen, or if one breaks. So I've been using these finger picks for a while, and they're 1941 showcase picks. Bill Stokes had a company that made these. I'm not sure if they're available anymore, but I liked them because they were kind of made to copy the alloy and the pre-war National picks. That's what I started off. When I started playing, I had some old National picks, but I'm really liking these. I'm a fan of them because I like the way they sound. They fit my fingers well because I've been playing with these picks for many, many years now. And there's some picks on the market now that have a band that's not solid, like it's maybe like 2 pieces of band. Not as much of a fan of those because I think it's so important for these picks to fit, kind of like if you were a rock climber, the way climbing shoes fit. They're very snug to your fingers. Thumb pick, I have a little bit more flexibility with. This one's a blue chip pick, and I've been using it for a while. I think it sounds really good. I like it because I used to use a multicolored plastic Dunlop thumb pick, and it just cut off the circulation in my thumb. Like, I did that for decades, and I just kind of got used to always having a purple thumb tip. And then after a while, I started to think that can't really be a good thing to have a perpetually purple thumb tip. So I found a blue chip pick in size small. This is the JD Crow style. And it fits me pretty well. It doesn't grip my finger as hard, so it took a minute to get used to, but it's tight enough, and it sounds really good, and the blade doesn't wear out, which is nice. The plastic thumb picks tend to get like little divots in them after some time. So I'm an advocate of these. They're a little bit pricey, but you're not going to lose them, so it'll be worth the $35. And while we're talking about picks, and I think this is a comment that John Bradfield made in our last video exchange. When I put my picks away, I very intentionally and deliberately put them away like this. Like, I take them off my fingers. I got my middle finger, and I want to make sure that I know which pick is which when I put them back on. So I stack them so it's index, middle, and then I take my thumb pick and I loop that over the top, and it holds my picks. It's this horrible mental game if you put your picks on and you can't figure out if you've got the right pick on the right finger. So if you do it this way, rather than just throwing them loose in your pick case, then you'll know. Then you can store them like this, keep them in your pocket this way. You only have to wonder where one thing is, not where three things are. So that's just a good little trick. I guess John found it useful, so I'm passing it along. I don't know if it's a girl thing or if it's just a banjo player thing, but it's worked for me.
I love that. I've used that and have not lost a pick since. I think that's really awesome. Here's a question from Melissa. What's your pep talk for new banjo players to get them past the discouraged phase? Asking for a friend. I guess that also segues into, what level of players are your lessons on your ArtistWorks school for? Who's this for? How do we get into this?
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for tuning in. Well, please tell your friend that not to be discouraged, but I'll share my experience. When I first started playing the banjo, I was incredibly discouraged because of the picks. That was like the biggest thing. So when I put my course together, I was determined not to have others hit the stumbling block of the picks right off the bat. So let me take my picks off, put them away in my little weird way of doing it. And in my course, I start off with just your fingers on the strings, because that's the way, I don't know, I think that's the way to like really kind of start to feel the instrument and not have any barriers to entry. And I just really wanted to make this instrument as immediately accessible to people as I could. So reminding people that when you play the banjo, the first chord's free. If all you can ever do on this instrument is strum with your thumb, you've got one chord already. There's a C chord, so you've got two. If you keep your index finger down and drop that middle finger down on the third string, there's your third chord. So you can play a lot of tunes just doing this. And if that's all you can do, you can still have fun with this instrument. If you're not satisfied there, the way I progress through my course is with the basic alternating roll pattern, no picks. And for anybody who's played fingerstyle guitar, you'll recognize that this picking pattern is really kind of the same as Travis picking, this kind of thumb index, thumb middle idea. If you pick up a guitar and grab a G chord and play that picking pattern, you'll be playing Travis style guitar. When I was working on the course, I kept thinking, well, that's the first thing that my teacher taught me to play, but is it weird, or is it like just this kind of weird anachronism? And then as I started to think about it more, I realized that you find this roll pattern in bluegrass picking all the time. And if you think about the B section of Cripple Creek, Earl Scruggs, that's an alternating roll pattern. So I think it's like a foundational picking pattern that Earl built on. And I bet when he was learning to play, he may have started playing this way too. And then he figured out how to play a forward roll and then turn the banjo into a rocket ship. So how not to get discouraged, I think, is to play with other people. Find somebody else that's also starting, maybe somebody who's starting out on guitar, and work on this together, because music is really, at its very best, it's something that we can share with other people. Sitting in your room with the metronome blaring, trying to play an alternating roll all by yourself is inherently not going to be very much fun. But if you can do it just enough to be able to play one tune or two tunes with somebody else, then go do that as soon as possible, because that's the whole thing. It's like music is a social exercise at its best. Even at any level, whether you're a beginner or whether you're a professional player, the social aspect of the music, in some ways, it's almost more important than the musical part of the experience. So I guess that would be what I would suggest. But don't get discouraged. And if you're already in my ArtistWorks school, please send me a video and let me give you some tips. Melissa, I might be talking to your friend, for example. And let me see if I can give you some tips to help shortcut any challenges or technique things that might become, obstacles or barriers as you move through the course.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alison. So yeah, in the spirit of that, just the collaborative nature and stuff, we've had a couple questions come through just asking about sort of what's on the horizon from you. I know like very recently you dropped a new single, 5 days out, 2 days back, featuring Tim O'Brien on lead vocals and amazing legendary player lineup, Steve Martin, and of course our very own Brian Sutton from ArtistWorks. Tell us a little bit about sort of your collaborative process these days versus like when you first got started. What is it like putting music together today at your level now?
Well, it's kind of back to that, what Melissa was asking, engaging with other people through music. That's the money thing. It is no matter what level you're at, if you're a beginner, if you're a professional or whatever. And I had never written very much music with other people, but then co-wrote a tune for my last record with Steve Martin, who's a great banjo player and kind of a unicorn in the sense that he plays three-finger bluegrass style, but he also plays clawhammer style, and he does them both really well. And I've always really loved the sound of picked banjo and clawhammer banjo. And if you're interested in clawhammer banjo, I really recommend checking out Alison DeGroot's school because she's an amazing clawhammer player. And clawhammer and three-finger banjo in the key of double C tuning, which I'll see if I can get in quickly, is like one of the best things ever. And I heard John McEwen and Earl Scruggs duet on Soldier's Joy on the Will the Circle Be Unbroken album. And I just thought it was the best thing. So I feel like I spent kind of a lot of my career chasing that idea of writing a tune that would be great for the two banjos. So long story short, Steve and I co-wrote a tune called Foggy Morning Breaking. And that tune we put out as a single, and it, to my surprise and Steve's incredible excitement, went to #1 on Bluegrass Radio. And so Steve was so excited about that a few weeks after that, he sent me lyrics to a song about having a #1 song on Bluegrass Radio. So then we wrote that song together. It's called Bluegrass Radio, and that has sort of spawned like continued, collaboration and writing. And so the latest one, you're right, Marcus, is 5 days out, 2 days back. And a lot of the tunes that we've been writing kind of stem out of double C tuning, which I'm trying to get into without tuning too much. But I wanted to mention it because it's a really great tuning. So just like I had my banjo in an open G tuning, now I've got it in sort of a C tuning. It's almost an open C chord, except it's got a D note on the top, and a D isn't in the C chord, but an E is. So if I fret on the second string, second fret of the first string, I've got a C chord. And this is a great tuning to mess around with because it just opens up some different possibilities. So yeah, 5 days out is another one that started with banjo, just out of this tuning. And I sent Steve the music, and he came up with lyrics just about kind of the life of a touring musician. And it's not a sad song. It's really a happy song. It's just like, this is this guy's life, and it has its challenges, but it has its joys too. So that's kind of the thrust of the tune. But yeah, we've been writing a bunch of music together, and we're working on a record that'll hopefully be out in the fall. It's got some really interesting collaborations on it. But the thing that's most interesting to me is the fact that all the music has stemmed from two banjos. So how cool is that? What could be cooler than that?
That's fantastic. And that'll be available through Compass Records, will it? Where can folks find some info?
There's a little bit. That tune actually starts off with a little riff. It goes like this. So if you listen to the track, you'll hear that kind of lick. The tune started was just as a banjo tune, and then Steve sort of ran with it and came up with the story. But anyways, you can find it on YouTube and Spotify and all your favorite streaming services, and hopefully in physical form soon.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we had some questions about sort of where to look for that as it comes out. Would you mind playing a little more of that for us?
Oh, sure. I'm trying to think if I can, like, where it goes from there. Yeah, I'll try to play a little bit, and we'll see what happens. Gives you the idea. It's definitely better with the lyrics, but I do think it's really interesting writing with another banjo player, in the sense that Steve, when he listens to the melody, he's really tuned into the nuances and the syncopation of the banjo. So when he sets lyrics to it, he's coming to it from the place of somebody who is hearing exactly what's going on the banjo, because he's a banjo player, rather than just sort of glossing over and picking the the high points of the melody. And so it's made it super fun. It's been great. We're just finishing up a track that also kind of originated out of double C tuning. The tune is called Dear Time, and Jackson Brown is singing lead on it. Jeff Hanna from Nitty Gritty Dirt Band we just put his harmony part on it, and the melody on the banjo is something like. So it's funny to hear it now with just the banjo part, but again, it's another one that's how it started, and just it's a very kind of sweet meditation on the passage of time that Steve kind of came up with. So anyways, I'm looking forward to sharing all those tunes soon, and you'll be able to find everything through Compass Records, but also at your favorite music sites, whether it's digital or physical stores, or wherever music is sold these days.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for playing some of that. We're really excited to check that out when it comes out.
Oh, thanks.
Very cool. Anything else on the horizon you want to plug before we sign off here?
Yes, probably. Well, I've been in the studio producing a lot of stuff lately, and one of the things we're working on here at Compass is an 80th anniversary tribute album for the Stanley Brothers. And we just released the first single from that record. When we started to work on that record, I knew that I wanted to do a version of Ralph's Banjo Special using Ralph Stanley's banjo, if I could figure out how to do it, as a triple banjo tune. And so I reached out to Ralph too, and he was kind enough to let us use his dad's archtop banjo. And then I called my banjo pals Gina Britt and Kristen Scott Benson up and asked if they would do this triple banjo thing with me, and they both were game for it. So we put that single out at the end of February, and you can find it on the digital services, and you can probably find an art track on YouTube too. And we've got a video that'll probably be coming out in the next month or so. But it's a really super fun track, and it's a very female forward track too, which I always like to do when I can. It features Kimber Ludiker and Deanie Richardson on twin fiddles. Missy Raines is playing bass, and Justin Moses on guitar, and Tristan Scroggins on mandolin. And we recorded it in this room that I'm sitting in, and then we shot the video in here too. And we had to figure out how for each of us to have a chance to play Ralph's banjo. So we each play a solo. Each of us banjo players plays a solo on Ralph's banjo, and then play our regular banjos, except for Gina, who played Ralph's all the way through. So anyway, that's a lot of banjo information. But if you're interested in hearing what triple banjos sound like on Ralph's Banjo Special, please check it out. It turned out to be really, really fun. So there's that, and I'm working on a new Della Mae record that I'm producing and playing on some of that'll be out in the fall. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something. It seems like I've just finished a Missy Raines record that'll be out on May 2nd, I think, that I produced, and a Special Consensus's 50th anniversary record, which is coming out in June. So we just finished mixing and mastering both of those records. So be on the lookout for those two.
Fantastic. Yeah, you guys are always busy with the coolest stuff. So Compass Records, check it out, everybody. And Alison, I just got to say thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for doing this spotlight. We are so proud to have you on the roster. And for anybody that's interested in checking out more with Alison, certainly like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check out all the videos that she put out this week here. But click the links below in the description to check out her school. Players for any level can learn directly from Alison, and you can get video exchanges happening so she can actually coach you directly. So thank you so much for joining us all today. Banjo pals, as Alison would call us all. And thanks again, Alison. This was a treat.
Thanks for having me, Marcus, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. And if you're not already a banjo pal, I just want to say that I always feel that teaching is an important part of the tradition that I've gotten to be a part of my whole life. And it's always a privilege to get to play what I've learned forward. And when I was learning to play, discouraged or not, no matter who the banjo player was, from, J.D. Crowe on down to just the guy in the parking lot at the Shakey's Pizza Palace, people are always so generous with me, sharing what they knew about the instrument. So it's always my pleasure to get to share what I know about the banjo with other people, and hopefully make them become part of the banjo fold. There's nothing better than the banjo. It's truly America's instrument, and it will lead you on many great adventures. So if you're getting discouraged, I just want to say don't be discouraged. Plow through and try to use this instrument to connect with other people, because that's one of the banjo's superpowers. And we all have superpowers. Mine is to play the banjo, but also enjoy playing it forward to others. So don't be discouraged, and send me a video if you're in the school. Don't be shy.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Marcus.
Bye, everybody.